In this last section of the Lua programming intro, we're going to be covering some of the standard libraries that are part of Lua. These are just basic libraries of functions and utilities that you can use to improve your Lua experience. So we're going to go through 3 of the libraries today, and just like the previous examples, we're going to go ahead and open the main file with your console and Corona set up, and there is an examples file as well, which you can look at to go through some of the examples that we have here. So the first thing we're going to do is look at string manipulation. Now, string manipulation is anything that's based on the use of the string data type. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and create a string, and then we're going to print that string. Let's see what it comes out to. So it should print out as hello world. Alright. And now we're going to take a look. There's plenty of string functions. This manual gives a great detail on how to use each one. But we're going to look at a few that you might consider using in your code. So the first one we're just going to look at is string.lower. So what we're going to do is we're going to say var equals string.lower, and then we're going to give it the var string. So what this will do is it's going to reassign var with the value of the string being lowered. And what that does is it lowercases every letter in the string. So this is an example if you wanted to lowercase everything. We also can find the length of a string, string.len. So let's go ahead and do that. And we'll see here that this finds that the length of the string is 11 because it's 5, 6, 11 total elements of the string. So even a single space in here has an additional add to the length because it is part of this total string. So let's take a look at reverse as well. So string.reverse, as it sounds, reverses the string, having it write the opposite direction. So we have hello world backwards here. So there's plenty of other things you can mess around with here. The last one that we're going to look at is the substitution ones, because these are ones that you will find yourself using quite often. So we're going to use string.sub. So what string.sub does is it takes a section of the string and returns it as the value. And the section that it returns is based on the second and third arguments. So I didn't give any, so it fails here. So let's do var comma 2. And what we're going to see here is we're going to get hello world. So it's starting from the second number of the string, the second character, and going to the end. So it's from the second one to the end. If you give it one number, that's the order it's going to do. And we can also give this a negative number, and that's going to make it go up to, or from the second to the last to the end. So it's just LD because it's going from the end of the string back to, and that's the part that it's showing. So we could give it even, let's say, -5, and that should give us world, because it's going 5 back from the end of the string. And in the same sense, we could give it 6, and that will also give us world because it's cutting off, it's starting on the 6th, which is why we also have that space there. So string.sub is very useful when you need to get a particular section of a string. And you can also give it 2 values, so we could say we want it to start from 1 and go to 5, and that's just going to give us hello, because it's starting on the 1st, it's going to the 5th. So that's the basics of string.sub. You'll probably use that quite a bit. There's also gsub, gmatch, format. There's quite a few that are a little more complex that we'll go through as we get to them in our tutorials. But we're not going to cover them in this section. So please take a look through these various string libraries when you have an opportunity. So the next section we're going to go through is table manipulation. So this is for any basic table type in Lua. So the most important one that we're going to go over here is removing an object. So let's say we create a table with 4 items in it. So let's say we have these 4 items, and if we were to print, say, the 3rd item, it's going to come out as 123 here because that's the 3rd in the list. But if we were to remove the 2nd item, then the 3rd now is 61 because we removed 6. This removes the 2nd item in this array, so it removes 6, thus making 61 the third item in the table. So removing an item from the table is very important when you need to take out one element of the table that you no longer need. There's also insert, which has the opposite effect, and that allows us to add something into the table. So what we're going to do is we're going to give it the table, the position, and then the value. So now we'll see that 6 is the third item because we just added 32 as the second element. So if we print the second element now, you'll see it's 32 because we inserted that right here. So it would be the equivalent of that being there. So that's table insert and remove. And then we'll go through the other ones later on a need basis. Now, the last API that we'll be covering is the Math API. So the Math API is a wide variety of standard arithmetic, algebra, just basic equations that you may need. So you have sine, cosine, tangent, you have math.pi, which actually returns the value of pi as far as you need it. Another important one that we use quite a bit in games is math.random, which will give you a random number. I'll show you here. If we do math.random between 1 and 10, and then print that, it's going to give us a random value between 1 and 10. So we got a 4. So if we did that, let's try it a second time. This time give it somewhere between, let's say, -10 and 10. So now it's going to give us a random 1 through 10, then it's going to give us random -10 through 10. So we got a 5 and then a -5. So this is an example of random. You'll see every time you run it, you get 2 new random numbers. So those are used quite a bit. A lot of these, they basically do as you'd expect, based on the actual formula or the equation that they represent. So another one that we'll use quite often is math.floor and math.ceil. So I'll show you an example of that. Let's say we have a number, it's 3.5, something like that, and we want it to be a whole number. So what we can do is we actually say var is math.floor itself, and that will round it down basically to 3 because it brings it down to the lowest whole number. And then math.ceil does the same, but it goes up to the next highest number, so it'll take it to 4. So that's an example of some of the math equations. We'll also be using sine, cosine, and tangent whenever we deal with angles and some basic equations for objects moving in the 2D space. And then we'll probably be covering some of the other elements such as min and max later on. So thank you for joining us for this section of Lua programming. In the next chapter, we're going to be covering the basics of Corona and get into making the most basic of gameplay. So thank you for joining us.